In this module, we will talk about management of MDR and XDR tuberculosis. We will be talking about the definition of MDR and XDR and pre-XDR. Then we will cover the epidemiology, global as well as Indian, how this develops, the laboratory issues, management of drug-resistant tuberculosis. We will also have a look at the case studies. We will talk about the newer drugs, shorter MDR-TB regimen. Then briefly we will cover the programmatic aspect of drug-resistant tuberculosis, and we will also talk about the role of surgery, and finally we will conclude. If you look at the global annual incidence, recently the global annual report 2016 was released, and it showed that in 2015 alone there were 10.4 million new cases of tuberculosis, and India contributed around 27% of them. And in this report about the MDR tuberculosis, they reported that there were 4.8 lakh cases of tuberculosis in 2015 which developed, and India had 1.3 lakhs of MDR tuberculosis in 2015. You see, the common belief is that any TB patient not responding to treatment is drug-resistant tuberculosis, and also many people believe that TB patient with resistance to many drugs, they are MDR XDR tuberculosis. But we should know that this is a laboratory term. MDR tuberculosis we say when there is resistance to at least INH and rifampicin, which are the key drugs in the management of tuberculosis. And the XDR tuberculosis, that is extensively drug resistant tuberculosis, it includes cases with resistance to INH and rifampicin and any of the fluoroquinolone and at least one of the three second line injectables, that includes caprimycin, kanamycin, amikacin. Streptomycin is not included here in the list of second line injectables. Then about the pre-XDR tuberculosis, it includes resistance to INH and rifampicin and either any of the fluoroquinolones or at least one of the three second line injectables, that is caprimycin, kanamycin or amikacin. Now looking at how common is MDR tuberculosis globally, in this report of 2016, they found that in 2015 alone there were 4.8 lakh cases of MDR tuberculosis, and additionally monoreference cases were 1 lakh, and India, China and Russian Federation, they contributed around 45% of these 5.8 lakh cases. And coming to India, in 2015 there were estimated 1.3 lakh cases of MDR which developed, and this is very important is that among the new cases of tuberculosis, 2.5% are MDR tuberculosis. That is, if there are 100 cases of tuberculosis, 2.5% of them will be MDR tuberculosis. And among the previously treated cases of tuberculosis, 16% they are MDR tuberculosis. And regarding the XDR tuberculosis, as per data from the Gujarat, 3.5% of the MDR were XDR tuberculosis, and 24% of the MDR they had fluoroquinolone resistance, and mainly it is because of the misuse of anti-TB drugs. Looking at the factors which lead to development of drug resistance TB, there are clinical and operational factors, and one of the very important factors is the unreliable treatment regimen by the doctors. Either the lesser number of drugs are prescribed or they are prescribed in inadequate dosages or durations. Studies have shown that if there are 100 doctors, they are prescribing 70–80% of the different kind of regimen. So you can imagine what must be happening in the field conditions. Adding a single drug to a failing regimen is another important factor. So never add a single drug if a regimen is failing, at least 3 or 4 new drugs should be added. Then the drugs are easily available in the private sector and it is being misused also. So that also we need to keep in mind. The poor drug supply in the programmatic condition was an important factor earlier, but now fortunately they are available in the regular supply. Then poor quality of the drugs is another important factor, especially the poor bioavailability. Whenever we combine INH and rifampicin, the rifampicin bioavailability could be reduced. So whenever you give a combination in a single tablet, one should be careful about this. Then there are sociological factors. The patient they tend to take the drugs irregularly, they stop the drugs prematurely, they neglect the disease, and they are even ignorant why they should be taking the drugs regularly. So we need to counsel them, we need to educate them. Then another thing is that when one should suspect that it could be a case of drug resistant tuberculosis. If you have a patient on treatment and you find the sputum remains positive, despite the treatment being continued. One should think of this. If the patient is clinically deteriorating, patient has taken the irregular treatment earlier, or patient is relapsing after the treatment, there is a history of contact with drug-resistant tuberculosis either in the family or at the workplace, then HIV-TB co-infection, they should also be looked for MDR tuberculosis so that we can catch them early to prevent the deaths. And always whenever you think of MDR or XDR tuberculosis, must go for laboratory confirmation. Let us discuss about the laboratory issues in MDR XDR tuberculosis. There are phenotypic methods like the Livingston-Johnson medium method, but here the DST takes around 3 to 4 months. Then in the Midget method, that is liquid culture, the DST can be obtained in 2 to 3 weeks. It may take 4 to 5 weeks in some of the cases. Then we have genotypic methods. In the genotypic methods, main things are the line probe assay, that is LPA. It tells us about the INH and rifampicin resistance for both the drugs in 1 or 2 days. While another method is GeneXpert, you must have heard about this. It tells only rifampicin resistance, but the time taken is say around 2 hours only. That is the advantage of this. In the line probe assay, also called the Hind test, it tells about the INH and rifampicin resistance, but one should remember it is less sensitive for INH resistance, so it can miss some of the INH resistant cases. And another thing is that is only useful for sputum smear positive cases. The XDR tuberculosis, then there is a CBNet method which we call as the GeneXpert. Here the field studies have shown that it can detect around 99% of smear positive cases and even 80% of the smear negative cases. So, if you compare with the LPA cannot be done in smear negative cases, but GeneXpert rather it is being used to detect smear negative cases also. And the studies have shown that rifampicin resistance can be detected with 95% of sensitivity and 98% of specificity. So, very high specificity for rifampicin resistance. Then look at this for the extrapulmonary tuberculosis cases in adults as well as in children. The GeneXpert method is very good for lymph nodes as well as very good for the CSF. So, when it shows 84.5%, 0.9% sensitivity, but we need to remember that this is among the culture positive cases. So, if there is a lymph node or a CSF which is culture positive, among them the sensitivity can go up to 85% or 79%. It is not even for gastric aspiration, especially in children, it gives a very high sensitivity to the tune of almost 83.8%. But it is not very good for the pleural fluids. Now in a new case of TB, if you find the GeneXpert is positive for RIF resistance, we need to repeat the test, and if the 2 tests are positive for RIF resistance, we can start the MDR-TB treatment. But unfortunately, in practice, what is happening based on a single GeneXpert report, the doctors are starting. So, in some of the cases, we may be falsely starting the MDR-TB treatment. So, we need to repeat as per the current guidelines. While if there is a case with retreatment tuberculosis, here even if one test is positive for RIF resistance, one can start the MDR-TB treatment. Then you look at what is happening in the market. Soon we are going to have GeneXpert Omni. It is a point of care test. It is smaller, it is mobile and low cost. So, it can be placed in the field conditions in the clinics so that it can diagnose early. Then we are also looking for expert MDR-RIF Ultra. Ultra, here it is more sensitive, almost as sensitive as the liquid culture, and in smear positive cases, almost 100% cases it will be able to catch, and smear negative cases it should be able to catch around 90%. Then expert XDR is also in the near future, which will be able to tell us about the XDR tuberculosis. That is, additionally it will look for the fluoroquinolones as well as the injectables, and this we can expect by end of 2017. Then there is for the LPA, currently it can detect only first line drugs. We have in the pipeline the MTBDR second line assay. This can detect for second line drugs. In some of the countries it is already introduced, and in our country also it will be introduced soon, even in the field conditions. The specificity for fluoroquinolones and second line drug is around 98 to 99%. That means if there is an adult case with tuberculosis and found positive for resistance to injectables or to the fluoroquinolones, we can treat the patient because specificity is very high. However, the sensitivity is low. So it it may not detect 20% cases of fluoroquinolone resistance, almost 1/4 cases of the second line injectable resistance, and 25 to 33% cases of axial tuberculosis. And for kanamycin, the sensitivity is low. That means if it says resistance, you can start the treatment for XDR or pre-XDR tuberculosis based on the result. But in case it says no resistance, then one has to go for the liquid culture before deciding, because it can miss many of these resistance to the fluoroquinolones or injections. Then we have the MTBDR second line assay version 2. In this version, the advantage is that the sensitivity for fluoroquinolones and injectable second line drugs, it has improved. The sensitivity for kanamycin resistance is also improved, because it is taken into consideration the EIS gene also. Then it can be tested in sputum smear negative cases. So you can see in this case it has many advantages over the version number 1. Then we must remember how much is the reliability of the DST being done. DST is very reliable for INH and rifampicin, as well as for the injectable second line drugs and fluoroquinolones. So in case you have a report from a certified laboratory and it says INH or rifampicin or second line injectables fluoroquinolone resistance, one can believe it and can go ahead with the treatment. However, for certain drugs, the DST, even in the good lab, is less reliable, and these drugs they include streptomycin, ethambutol, and most of the second line drugs, which includes ethionamide, cycloserine, PAS, there the reliability is low. And some of the drugs reliability is least, especially for pyrazinamide and cycloserine. These are for the technical reasons. Pyrazinamide, if we do with the liquid culture, the sensitivity or reliability is higher. Then let us look at what are the basic principles of managing drug-resistant tuberculosis. First and important is we must use at least 4 core drugs which are likely to be effective, along with pyrazinamide if it can be given. And when we say likely to be effective, what does it mean is patients should not have used them earlier, these drugs which we are using, there could be laboratory proven drug susceptibility, and there could be epidemiological evidence that the drugs may be sensitive when the laboratory facilities are not there. So if these conditions are fulfilled, we can say that yes, these drugs could be reliable, and this could form the part of the 4 drugs along with pyrazinamide. And among the 4 core drugs, we always prefer to have injectables, one of the injectable, and fluoroquinolones as the first choice. And we should try to choose 4 core drugs from group A to group C. I will come to it a little later, that group A, B, C. And if required, then the drugs from D2 and D3 can be added. Again, we will be discussing it soon. You remember the earlier WHO recommended grouping of the drug was as per group 1, that was first line drugs. Group 2 included injectables, that is kanamycin, amikacin, caprimycin. Then group 3 included fluoroquinolones, including levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, gedifloxacin, and you must remember the ciprofloxacin as a anti-TB drug is no more recommended, because it is found to be inferior to the 3rd or 4th generation quinolones, that is levofloxacin, mox or gedifloxacin. Then the group 4 included less efficacious and poorly tolerated drugs, which includes the oral bacteriostatic drugs including prothionamide, thionamide, cycloserine or terazodan or PAS. Just remember here PAS is in the group 4. Then we had drugs in the group 5 with unclear efficacy, which included bedaquiline, delamanid, clofazimine, amoxicillin clavulanic acid, linezolid, imipinam, cilastatin, meropenem, erythromycin, high dose INH, etc. So this was the grouping earlier in 2014 WHO guidelines, and now 2016 guidelines have been released. As per these guidelines, we have the class A, B and C, which are called the core drugs, and class D, which are called the add-on drugs. In class A, we have the class A is fluoroquinolones, including levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, gedifloxacin. Then we have class B, including second line injectables, which includes amikacin, caprimycin, kanamycin. Streptomycin is by and large not to be used as this, only in circumstances when the other second line injectables cannot be used, and we have documented sensitivity to streptomycin, only then we should consider this. Because most of the countries, when they have MDR, streptomycin is additionally resistant. Then the other core drugs includes ethionamide, prothionamide or cycloserine or terazodan. And if you notice here, the linezolid and clofazimine, which was earlier in group 5, it has been upgraded. It is based on the evidence that now they are called co-drug, linezolid and clofazimine. Then other add-on drugs include D1, that is pyrazinamide, ethambutol and high dose INH. D2 includes bedaquiline delamanid. So it has come higher up from group 5 because now we have evidence globally of using them. And D3, the pass has gone to the D3 mainly because of the adverse drug reactions. Then in the D3 we have impenam cilastatin, meropenem, moxicillin, clavulanic acid. And now it is said that clarithromycin should not be used as anti-TB drug. Then there are also guidelines for shorter MDR-TB regimen. You must have heard about them. In 2016, WHO has issued guidelines for shorter MDR-TB regimen. In this regimen, we treat MDR-TB cases for 9 to 12 months, provided the resistance to injectables, fluoroquinolones and other drugs to be used in this regimen can be excluded. So, patient should not be resistant to the drugs which form part of this shorter regimen, and patient has not been previously used with the second line drugs for more than 1 month. So, history should not suggest that patient has used them, and there should not be any resistance to the drugs. I will come to that. This regimen of 9 to 12 months has intensive phase of 4 months, which can be extended to 6 months, and the continuation phase is 5 months. The intensive phase we use moxifloxacin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, clofazimine. This is used in continuation phase also. Additionally, during the intensive phase we use kanamycin, ethionamide and INH. You see, the basic principle here is that the injectable period has been reduced to 4 months minimum, it could be maximum 6 months. Then the drugs which have the side effects or adverse drug reactions like kanamycin, the ethionamide and high dose INH, it is stopped after the intensive phase. And one thing to be noticed here is that moxifloxacin and INH are high dose moxi and high dose INH. So, once you have taken the history in detail, you have the laboratory test done. So, how to plan the MDR-TB or XDR-TB treatment? So, first look at the DST report, which are the drugs laboratory is saying sensitive, which are the drug laboratory saying are resistant, and we need to keep in mind in which cases it is reliable, which cases it is not reliable. Then look at the history carefully, make a list which drugs patient has taken and for how long, and which drug patient has not taken, and whether the drugs were taken regularly or irregularly. So, keep in mind both the information. Some people they design the regimen only based on the laboratory, which is not correct. So, we have to keep both the things in mind. Once you diagnose MDR-TB treatment, the regimen which can be given is a part of the national guideline also. In the intensive phase, we treat the patient minimum for 6 months and extendable to 9 months depending on the culture conversion. If 4th month culture is negative, we can go for the continuation phase at 6 months. In case the 4th month culture is still positive, we can extend the treatment by 1 month. In case 5th month culture is positive, we can extend the treatment by another 1 month. But the maximum duration is 9 months for intensive phase. It includes injection kanamycin, levofloxacin, pyrazinamide, ethionamide, ethambutol and cycloserine. And once we start the continuation phase, it is given for 18 months, which includes ethionamide, levofloxacin, ethambutol and cycloserine. Of course, if you have laboratory results of kanamycin resistance, it can be replaced by, depending on the sensitivity like the capreomycin. In case it is resistant to some other drug, they can be replaced. If levofloxacin is resistant, it can be replaced by other drugs like moxifloxacin, linezolid, clofazimine. So, these things one should consider. Then the XDR-TB, we have a national guideline regimen called category 5. It has 7 drugs including capreomycin, linezolid, clofazimine, moxifloxacin, PAS, high dose INH and comoxiclav. And the reserve drugs, in the national guideline clarithromycin, thiazidazone, but it is being revised now. Clarithromycin is being removed from this, and even the other 7 drugs, depending on the DST pattern, one can choose which drugs are to be given. And the duration for intensive phase is 6 months to 12 months depending on the sputum culture conversion, and the continuation phase is for 18 months. Let us see a clinical case. In this case, this was a 28-year-old female weighing 44 kg. She came to us in May 2013 with cough and fever for 3 months, and there was a history of MDR-TB treatment in her elder sister. So, there was a history of contact with the MDR-TB case. So, she has received, you look at the drugogram which we make. In 2013, she received the 4 first line drugs, and even after 3 months, she remained sputum smear positive. This was the X-ray showing bilateral extensive disease with cavity lesion on the right side. So, here if we see, the laboratory report showed sensitive to ethambutol and pyrazinamide, and patient had taken for 3 months. And we also know that the DST pattern against these two drugs is not reliable. So, one has to take a call in this scenario whether to give or whether not to give. And patient was documented to be resistant to rifampicin, INH and streptomycin. And the DST had not been done for second-line injectable drugs or to fluoroquinolones. So, what should be the regimen in this case scenario? In this case scenario, we can use the classical category 4 regimen, which includes kanamycin, levofloxacin, ethionamide, cycloserine. And since the laboratory is saying sensitive and patient has used regularly for 3 months, one can use pyrazinamide and ethambutol. And also look at the weight bands. One should use the weight bands as per weight of the patient. And in the same case scenario, if you had a report where the DST had been done to second-line injectable drugs and to the fluoroquinolones, and the laboratory is saying it is sensitive. So, this patient has never used second-line drugs. The laboratory is telling us that this is sensitive. So, in these cases, one can use these drugs using a shorter MDR-TB regimen, that is 9 to 12 months of WHO regimen, which will include in the intensive phase moxifloxacin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, clofazimine, along with kanamycin, ethionamide and high dose INH, and in the continuation phase only moxifloxacin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol and clofazimine. Now, briefly touching about the adverse drug reaction. There are a lot of adverse drug reaction to the second line drugs or even third line drugs, we all know it. But there are some of the adverse drug reaction which every physician, even the workers in the field, the nurses, they should remember, so that they are not missed. Like for injectable second line drugs, they can have vestibular, cochlear side effects as well as renal toxicity. Caprimycin can cause electrolyte imbalance. The cycloserine is known to cause psychosis, depression and seizures. The quinolones can have seizure disorders, GI intolerance, and they can also cause arthralgias. PAS is known to cause GI side effects like nausea, vomiting, a very bad taste it causes, that many patients they don't feel like taking PAS and they say which can be used with banana, mashed with banana, otherwise it is a very difficult drug to tolerate. It can also cause goiter. Ethionamide again has a metallic taste and the GI side effect like nausea, vomiting, and it can also cause goiter. So, whenever you are giving ethionamide with PAS, we should look for the hypothyroidism. It can also cause gynecomastia. And clofazimine is known to cause dark coloration of the skin. Fortunately, it is reversible after stopping the drug, but it can take many months or years. So, whenever you are using clofazimine in a younger girl, they should be counseled that this can happen. Linezolid, now it is being used as a part of the category 5 regimen in XDR-TB cases, and sometimes it is a replacement drug for the second line drugs. So, there are some side effects like anemia, thrombocytopenia, peripheral neuropathy and optic neuritis. So, all the physicians using this linezolid must remember these. We look for it by doing repeated hemograms, and sometimes anemia can develop within a period of few days, and one can lose the patient can die in case we miss this side effect. The dosage is 600 milligram once a day. If not tolerating, then after few months one can come down to 300 milligram. Then whenever you are using moxifloxacin, clofazimine, bedaquiline, delamanid, all of these drugs can cause QTc prolongation. So, one should be careful about this. This is an example where you can see patient was on clofazimine, how the color has become dark brown. Then coming to briefly about the newer drugs, 2 new drugs have been approved for pre-XDR and XDR tuberculosis, but both have been approved for compassionate use. Bedaquiline was approved by US FDA in 2012, delamanid was approved by European Medical Agency in 2013, but it has been recommended that they should be used when we cannot make a drug regimen with the existing group A to C drugs either due to the drug resistance or because of the adverse drug reactions. The bedaquiline, the salt is TMC207, it is a quinoline derivative. It targets ATP synthase. In vitro, it is active against drug sensitive TB as well as MDR tuberculosis, and it can shorten the treatment duration. Regarding the dosages, it is to be used 400 milligram once a day for the first 2 weeks, and after that 200 milligram thrice per week for next 22 weeks. That is around 6 months total period for bedaquiline. And then the optimized background regimen is continued after 6 months, which could be 1.5 years, 2 years. We should remember the adverse side effects of the bedaquiline, mainly about the cardiac. it can cause QTc prolongation, and especially it is much more in case we use with the other drugs which can cause QTc prolongation, which includes moxifloxacin or clofazimine. Then it can also cause hepatitis, nausea, vomiting, arthralgia, headache, transaminitis. So any physician using this should know about it. Then we have developed national guidelines for bedaquiline use in pre-XDR and XDR tuberculosis under a conditional access program. So it is only to be used under a conditional access program, and they have identified 6 sites currently where it is being used on a pilot basis. Once we have experience from these sites, we are looking for the adverse drug reaction, then it will be given in other sites also. Another drug which we talked about is the delamanid. The salt is OPC 67683. It's a new agent from nitro-dihydroimidazole class of the compound. It inhibits mycolic acid synthesis and shown to be potent in vitro and in vivo studies against drug susceptible and drug sensitive strains of M. tuberculosis like bedaquiline. The dose is 100 mg twice a day for first 2 months, and then 200 mg once a day for next 4 months. And after that, we continue the baseline treatment regimen. It can again cause QTc prolongation. It requires ECG monitoring. Another important new drug is pretomanid. The salt is PA824. It's a nitronitazole compound. It inhibits mycolic acid synthesis and acts on the cell wall. It is active against replicating and non-replicating bacteria, and it may shorten the treatment of pulmonary tuberculosis. There is a STAND trial called Shortening Treatment by Advancing Novel Drugs. It's a combination of moxifloxacin, pretomanid and pyrazinamide, briefly called PMZ, that is PAMZ. It is advancing to a global phase 3 trial. The main importance about this is that it can reduce the treatment duration in drug sensitive cases to 4 to 6 months, and in MDR tuberculosis to 6 months. No injections, totally oral regimen, and it can be given in a fixed dose for all the patients. So in case it is found to be successful, it will be a revolution in the management of tuberculosis, drug sensitive as well as MDR tuberculosis. Then you must have heard about the 9-month Bangladesh regimen. The 515 patients were given this treatment regimen of 9 months in MDR TB cases. The intensive phase consisted of 4 months, and the continuation phase of 5 months. Intensive phase could be extended in case required. It has drug like in the intensive phase gedifloxacin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, clofazimine, and supplemented with kanamycin, prothionamide and INH in the intensive phase. And after that, these 3 kanamycin, prothionamide, INH was stopped. And you see, look at the results, 84% relapse-free outcome at 24 months, and only 11 patients, that is 2%, failed or relapsed. And they observed unfavorable outcome in high fluoroquinolone resistance, and based on this, the current WHO 9-month regimen is based, and even in the other countries it has shown good results. Then about the STREAM study, it is evaluating a standardized treatment regimen for MDR. Almost 400 patients are to be enrolled. In the control arm, we have WHO regimen. In the test arm, we have Bangladesh 9-month regimen, and gedifloxacin has been replaced by moxifloxacin because the gedifloxacin can cause hyperglycemia. So it is being replaced by moxifloxacin. It's a non-inferiority randomized trial, and follow-up will be 27 months after the randomization. Then STREAM phase 2 has also been planned. Here we have 2 additional regimen along with the bedaquiline has been added. In one of the arm, the STREAM regimen, it has been compared with 6-month regimen with the 2 months of initial injections. Then also along with the bedaquiline, there is a 9-month totally oral regimen. The next trial is another trial. It's an oral regimen for XDR tuberculosis, and using bedaquiline, pretomanid and linezolid for 6 to 9 months. And all the 3 drugs are expected to have a lower resistance. So it is being tried first in the XDR tuberculosis, and if it is found to be successful, it will be extended to MDR tuberculosis and drug-resistant tuberculosis. Briefly touching the programmatic aspect of the drug-resistant tuberculosis, it is called PMDT, that is programmatic management of drug-resistant tuberculosis. Here, the MDR and XDR tuberculosis cases are treated under a national program in field conditions, and it is using the rapid diagnostic methods, that is LP or GeneXpert, which we discussed earlier. In this, they are giving second-line drugs and third-line drugs free of cost to the patient in field conditions. Treatment is given daily, oral treatment daily, injectable 6 days a week, fully supervised. So patient goes to the center, consumes the drugs, and now the entire country has been covered by PMDT. Basically, in this case, initially the patients are admitted, and they are using the safe inpatient practices, that is infection control practices, by adequate spacing of the beds. So 4 to 6 feet should be there between two beds. They ensure the cross ventilation, and the basic infection control measures are ensured. There are monthly treatment boxes, the box A and box B, for depending on the intensive phase or continuation phase. And the entire country is having the laboratory structures, depending on, and they are linked to the various districts, and they are using the liquid cultures, they are using the LPA, they are using the gene experts machines. And you see in the last few years, there is a rapid expansion of gene expert machines. In 2016 alone, more than 600 machines have been installed and are being used under the program conditions. And if you look at the number of patients which have been enrolled in the PMDT program, the more than 1 lakh, around 10 cases, they have been given this treatment, the MDR TB, and even XDR TB cases have been more than 5,000 under the program. So there is a rapid expansion of PMDT in the country. Looking at the role of surgery, one should always keep in mind whether my case of MDR XDR tuberculosis can be considered for surgery. The common indication for surgery for MDR XDR tuberculosis include the patients who are not responding to the medical treatment, provided that the lesion is resectable, localized, and the surgery can be considered. So, the patient should be fit for surgery. Ideal time is between 6 to 9 months of treatment, but it may vary from case to case. And if we combine the surgery with chemotherapy, there is evidence that we can achieve treatment success in almost 90% of cases. Like few examples from the field, this patient had right destroyed lung with MDR tuberculosis. Pneumonectomy was done and patient responded. This case had thick walled cavity in the right upper lobe, as you can see. The pneumonectomy was performed, and again patient responded well to the treatment. So, dear students, I would like to conclude here with observations that MDR XDR tuberculosis is a laboratory diagnosis. We must remember that, never just say based on clinical grounds. We should make all efforts to prove it by laboratory. We should give the highest priority to prevent MDR XDR tuberculosis by effective use of the first line and second line TB drugs. We should try misusing them. Then, whenever we suspect MDR tuberculosis, we should try to use the rapid diagnostic genotypic methods so that we can start the treatment early. We know the early phenotypic methods, they take longer time. So, based on the genotypic method, we can start the treatment. And once the liquid culture reports, if required, we can review the treatment regimen. And also, the global experience is showing that the newer drugs, the newer regimen, they may help in reducing the duration of MDR XDR tuberculosis. Thank you.